Good morning. It's Tuesday and it's ASI Radio time. This is Nicole Rollander, editor of Stitches, and I'm joined today by CJ Mitica, editor of Wearables. So CJ hasn't been getting a lot of sleep lately.
Not my full night of sleep.
You welcomed a bundle of joy 2 weeks ago.
Yes, that is correct.
So congratulations,
Thank you.
And so you went from one child to two. So what's been the biggest change?
Well, I feel guilty because because my wife's been breastfeeding, and so babies to eat a lot in the first couple of weeks. Meanwhile, I feel like I've been solely devoted to my older daughter, just taking care of her, and I feel like I haven't spent any time with my youngest daughter, which I'm sure will change. But the first couple of weeks, I've been total support person. So I know you have two kids. So was it the same with you?
Yeah, and it definitely balances out because as they get older, then you kind of divide your time more equally. Mm-hmm. But they're so young too that they also won't remember.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so any mistakes I make early
right,
on,
so you'll be in the clear. I think when they hit 5, that's when you have to start being careful, what you say and what you do. But I think until then, you kind of have a free pass.
All right, awesome. that's good to know.
So today we're going to be joined by Marshall Atkinson. But before we get to that, because he's Chief Operating Officer of Visual Impressions, which is a high-volume contract shop offering screen printing, direct-to-garment, and embroidery. CJ, in your October issue of Wearables, you did a really ambitious project you've been talking about a while called the Dream Shop. So that's kind of a tool for screen printers to get their shops to the next level. So what are a couple of highlights from that you can share with us that people should look for in the October issue?
Sure. So the idea was basically that a lot of shops are either inefficient or don't have the right equipment. There's a lot of areas where they fall short. So the idea was to create was to be the sort of ideal shop, and we actually did it for 3 different things. We did it for a medium-sized shop. I think it's about 10,000 square feet and under. A small shop, 2,500, 3,000 square feet, and then a screen room. So we talked about all the equipment that would be in there, sort of like your ideal equipment, so some high-end stuff that maybe you wouldn't normally get, but you can really increase efficiency. And we talked a lot about the layout. So we actually had blueprints where we showed where the equipment is, how the workflow goes, where everything should be arranged. And actually, Marshall, who's on our advisory board, played a big part in that, because we leaned on our experts to give us advice, tell us how things should be arranged, what equipment they our readers should be looking for. And so I think there's a lot of great information in that package.
Yeah, and I looked through and I saw the blueprints, and I love that. And being the editor of Stitches, I know that a lot of decorators, they talk about workflow, like how does the job move through the production floor and what's the most efficient way to do it. So I know that those blueprints are going to be really invaluable to people who want to see how to improve their shop. And as I said, Marshall Atkinson is going to join us now. He's a decorating industry veteran, and he maintains the popular industry blog AtkinsonShirt.com. He contributes to trade magazines, he teaches at trade shows, and he offers consulting services while also serving on the SGIA board of directors. So he's doing a lot, and we're excited to have him join us today and to talk to him a little bit more about screen printing shops. So good morning, Marshall. Welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thanks, and congratulations, CJ. That's awesome news.
Thank you.
Yeah, you kept it a secret.
Well, it wasn't quite a secret around here, but perhaps the general public.
Yeah.
So what's the temperature out there today?
Today, it's somewhere in the 60s, I guess. I don't know. I'm in a big building.
I think we might have you beat. I think we're at around 72 today, so we're on the East Coast. So we have a bunch of questions for you. We want to pick your brain since we know you're this big industry expert. People look to you for advice, and you have expertise in a lot of areas. So one thing is shop organization. It's so key to efficiently processing jobs and getting the decorated apparel orders out the door. So what are 3 organization or workflow areas that you think decorators don't pay enough attention to, and how can they improve those?
Well, first, what you want to do is you want to touch things less. So anytime you really want to work on your communication, you want to work on your organization, and you want to work on your workflow. And so all that has to do with how many times you have to touch something. So if you need more information on your workflow, your work order, so you don't have to stop what you're doing and go ask somebody. Okay, so that's organization, just in how you're communicating the expectations for that order. For workflow in the shop, I see a lot of shops where they'll stage stuff. This is the jobs are running on Wednesday, and then something happens because the art didn't get approved or whatever, and they're moving that job to Thursday or Friday. They'll actually move those boxes over to the Friday row. Well, a better way of doing it would just be using the order number and stage everything with like the last digit of the work order number. So all the orders that end in 4 are in the 4 row. All the orders that end in 8 are in the 8 row. And that way anybody can find that box or those boxes for that order just by going to the right row and picking it. So when you're laying your shop out, and that article, by the way, CJ, came out great.
Thank
You're
you.
laying out your shop, okay, what you want to do is you want to have one direction. So anytime you go backwards or anytime you're having to, there's a friction point or a bottleneck, you really need to, look and try to resolve that challenge by moving something out of the way or making it easier, or really think about, why am I storing this stuff here? Is there a better place for it? I mean, don't put your old work order files out on the production floor, for example. I've seen that before, where they have a file cabinet right next to a press because they don't know where else to put it. That printer has to walk around that every single day, so it just makes it harder for him to do his job. So you really want to just make it so everything is as easy as possible. That's the key tip, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and I was just going to say as a follow-up, you made an important point that even if you have stuff laying in the middle of the floor and somebody's going to walk an extra, 5 steps around that's time wasted, throughout the day if you actually add that up. So I think people probably should take a look at their shops and just look for these even small things that could impede production.
Mm-hmm. So Marshall, I want to ask you, you're big on the idea of having stuff written down in your shop. So that's, written procedures for good workflow, employee handbooks. Like you mentioned, complete, purchase orders and work orders. So, that's something that you and I have talked about a bunch in just in our conversations and the articles that we worked on together. So, why do you think that a lot of shops fall short in that area? And in your experience, how has it helped the businesses that you've worked with?
Well, it's really about just getting the expectations. If you think about, your article is all about the blueprint, right? Your work order is the blueprint for that job. Mm-hmm. So if the printer or the embroiderer has to stop what they're doing to ask, hey, where's this going on the shirts? How many inches down from the collar or whatever? You just wasted that person's time. So if you could put the order in so that is described on your art mock-up or on the approval form, guess what? Everybody moves faster because you've solved that question. So it's really about getting the expectations about what has to happen to the people who are actually doing the work. And of course, that takes a lot of time to figure out and then the more you standardize stuff. So if you could just say, hey, a full front, for a screen print is always going to be 12 inches, wide, the artist knows what to do. So the customer service rep or the salesperson only has to put standard full front, and the artist knows to make it 12 inches wide. You just solve that problem, and nobody has to ask that question again. And so you just take that and just look at all the hundreds of things people do a day, and the more you standardize things, the more you use common language, the more you agree on what terms work for your shop, because, maybe 12 inches is too small for one shop. Maybe it should be 13. It doesn't really matter. It just matters what works for you and have everybody agree to it. That's the secret to really moving things fast, is communicating the expectations and then training people on solving that and holding them accountable to it. So if they don't do it right, you have to retrain them or they get in trouble or whatever. But you need to always focus on solving that problem.
All right, so this is shifting topics a little bit. We love what you're doing with your online T-shirt fundraising website, Ink the Cause. So can you tell us a little bit about the site and then share some of your e-commerce and online design best practices?
Sure. Well, it's inktothepeople.com, not Ink the Cause, but that's okay. And so one of the things that Ink to the People does is it makes it easy for people to fundraise for their cause. Okay, so that's probably where there was some confusion there, but. So what we do is it's a website that's totally dedicated to raising money for anybody. So you want to fund your high school band, you want to raise money for a veterans group, you got a social cause, that you want, your champion, whatever it is. It makes it easy by facilitating the order gathering. You can share your T-shirt online with your social network, and then it collects all the money, and then we ship everything out for you. And then what's really great about our site that a lot of these other sites don't do is you can set up your 501(c) and have it verified, and then all of the money goes directly to that cause. So if you're already a registered nonprofit, it's a great way for all the money to go directly to your nonprofit rather than to somebody who's going to write a check maybe if they get around to it. And so this is a great way for people to really verify that things are going right to that charity. So how I think websites that, any website, not just somebody who's raising money, you need to look at who's using the website, and you need to make it easy for them to do whatever they need to do. I think a lot of people have a very short attention span when it comes to websites. I know I do. So if it's a couple seconds and the page doesn't load, click, somebody is moving on. And so people's tolerance for that kind of stuff is really, really short. So you got to make it really easy for people to understand what's going on, make things really obvious. What's the next step? There's a giant green button that says click here. You shouldn't have to go search for something. And a lot of people, especially now, they're redoing their websites so they're responsive. If your website doesn't work on a phone or an iPad, you're dead in the water. So you got to do that work. And so if it's a static website like the old kind, that only works on a computer monitor, you're losing business. So those are my top tips there.
Yeah, so those all sound really functional, like the speed at which it loads, having it mobile enabled, and then, having it allow e-commerce. So those
Right.
are all really good tips, yeah.
Yep.
So Marshall, I know you're big on sustainability, and
Yes.
I know you've done a lot with visual impressionists to try to make it a sustainable operation. So I guess what does that mean exactly in terms of how you define it, and then what are a couple things that you've implemented that sort of contribute to that philosophy?
Well, sustainability is really key. I got into it really just about as a better way to run the business. I mean, it's great if you're all into tree hugging, earth crunchy kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you want to save money, and that's what it's really about for me. I mean, even though I care about that stuff, but so how do we do that? Well, you look at your building, whether you're renting a space or you own the space. You still have to pay for lights. You still got to pay for heat and air conditioning. You still are using natural gas for your dryers, or you're using electricity for all your equipment or whatever. So, and you use consumables. So you're using, ink and solvents, and do you have recycling? So sustainability is always about doing something better. Okay, and is there a better way? So one of the things I'm a big proponent of is starting that journey. Okay, and so the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. It's the same way as sustainability, and a great way of doing that is just going out, signing up with your local utility, and getting an energy audit. They'll send an expert out to your building, even if you rent the space, and they'll poke around. They'll look at your energy consumption. They'll look at your HVAC. They'll look at your everything, and they'll give you a grocery list of stuff that you can change, and you can save a bunch of money. And that's what it's about. And so SGIA has a great peer-to-peer network, which is a training group that meets every other week, and it's about an hour, and you go over how to measure your carbon footprint, how to lower your VOCs, how to do this or that or the other thing. And at the end of the program, you're basically ready for certification, and which is I'm a huge proponent of through the Sustainable Green Printing Partnership. This allows you to leverage your sustainability program to be a market differentiator, because you have the seal of approval that says that you're doing it right. And you're not one of those companies that just greenwash and say, I print on bamboo shirts, I'm green, because that's not being green. So getting SGP certification is the leading way that print companies can show that they actually walk the walk. And so I could talk about this for hours, but it's a huge thing, and so I'm a huge proponent of that. So you can look up SGIA has a great peer-to-peer group. Go to their website and look. And Sustainable Green Printing Partnership is sgppartnership.org, and you can look that up.
All right, great. So as we mentioned earlier, you blog and you cultivate a big social media presence. We interact on Twitter. Why do you think that's so important for businesses to do? And what do you say to an executive who says, I don't have time to be on social media. I've got to sell, I've got to print, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. So what do you say about that?
Well, anybody who says that they don't have time, it just isn't a priority for them. Because if it's a priority, you'll make the time. So, and then these days, there's all kinds of apps and gizmos and things that make social media easier. Okay? I mean, I'm a busy guy, but you know what I do? I write a blog. It publishes every Saturday. Well, how do I do that? Well, I spend 15 to 20 minutes every single morning writing, okay? And I do that with a cup of coffee every morning before I get up and get dressed and go to work, and that's because I prioritize that. And by Friday, that blog article is written. I edit it and just review it on Saturday morning, and then I publish it. And regardless if it's perfect or not, I publish it. And you just got to make that a habit, and you can do it. As far as the other social media channels, I use an app called Buffer, Buffer, and I schedule on Wednesdays and Sundays all of my social media posts for the week. It's a free app, and I do LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook all in one shot, and it's pretty easy. And it takes me about 15 minutes each of those 2 days to schedule my whole week's worth of work. That goes out on social media. But the key for social media, I think a lot of people don't understand, is it's social, okay? So it isn't just about you. You have to like and share and get engagement out of people. So you retweet your customers' posts. You like what other people share. You thank people for sharing or retweeting or liking your work. You comment on people's stuff. It's all about engagement, and that it drives it. So if your social media thinking is, I tried to do a Facebook page and I did it for a week and nobody really followed me, so I gave up, it's because you're not looking at it. It's kind of like going to a party, okay? We've all been to parties. So if you're the guy who just sits on the couch and never talks to anybody, you're not going to get a whole lot of enjoyment out of that party. But if you go to the party with the idea, I'm going to meet as many people as I can, and in the party, I bet I'll find one or two people that I really like and I can connect with, then that will happen. That's exactly like social media. You just got to get out there and do it, and don't be afraid to fail, and stick out your hand and say, hey, I'm Marshall. Nice to meet you. This is what I do.
So are there any sites that you prefer for business, or are there any that you think are not as effective?
Well, it depends on your business, really. You should go to Wearables and Stitches.
Well, of course,
I like that recommendation.
Yeah, but it's just one of these things where you got to look at your stuff. So, I mean, I'm always into HR issues. So there's one called TLNT, which is all about HR and management. I'm a big believer in electronic stuff, so I like Make Use Of, or I'm a big just looking for stuff. So one of the things I do is when I find sites or I find blogs or I find websites I like, I always subscribe to them, okay? Like, I hope people subscribe to my blog. So I subscribe to them, and then what happens is when they post something, you get it in your inbox. And then you read it, hey, that's a cool article. You can share that on your social media, which is what I do. So I share about 80% of my stuff as other people's content. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes it easy. And then I share about 20%. The other 20% is stuff that's about visual impressions. It's about ink to the people. It's about, my blog articles or whatever, or stuff that I've written for you guys. So it's like, that's how I do it, and that drives that engagement. But it isn't always about me, because if it's always about you, you've got a sale or you got a thing or whatever, people tune you out. they just don't even listen anymore. So you got to make it effective and what's interesting. And so I'm always interested in all kinds of stuff, and anything that I find interesting, I'll share that, and you get a lot of responses about it.
So go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, and then the other thing I like to share sometimes is I keep bumping into really cool quotes. But people will share a quote, or you read an article, or you read a book, and then I like to share quotes because people will like that, or they'll share the quote. And then sometimes these are people that you don't know who they are, and then that's your opportunity to connect with them and find out something about them. So I'll reach out to them with a private message and go, hey, I'm Marshall. Thanks for sharing this. What's going on, how can I help you, and that kind of stuff. And I've gotten customers out of that. I've gotten some friends out of that. So you just got to keep just kind of churning like the little gerbil in the wheel. You got to keep going with it.
Those are some good tips. Last question, Marshall. Visual Impressions, you guys are a contract decorator. You serve the promotional product industry and distributors.
Sure.
What are some things that distributors can do to help decorators like you produce their orders quickly and without errors?
Well, first off, they got to give us their information correct. I see, and I don't know why, we still get POs from people where they've left off information or they've cloned it and they forgot to take some notes off that say they wanted a sample, or they didn't. Their ship date is 00000. So what day am I supposed to ship that, right? Or their price, the worst is their pricing is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they've contacted the customer and they've priced it and everything, and then they give it to us, and then it was supposed to be a 3-color and ends up being 6, and we have to charge them more. Then there's this huge pushback. Well, I've already quoted my customer. I can't do that. Well, the reason you can't do that is because you don't want to lose the margin. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make me, the decorator, happy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one of these things that it has to be exactly what you're asking us to do. So again, just like with my own staff, you have to communicate clear expectations about what you want. That's how you be a success. That's how you drive more stuff through the pipeline faster. Because if my order team takes an hour to put in something that should take 3 minutes to put into our system because they have to send you 16 emails because they don't understand what you're talking about, that just drives everybody insane, and it becomes a big problem. Better is that you are using our price list, or somebody else is using your price list. You communicate what you want. You're giving us enough time to turn it around. You understand how long things take to do. You also understand, we have to physically get the inventory in and check it in and make sure it's right, and then schedule it to our schedule, right? All that takes time, but if you've ordered goods from across the country and it's going to take 3 or 4 days to come in, you can't expect that to ship Friday, right? Because we've lost all our production time in inventory transit. So the ASI person has to understand all those rules, right? And then talk to us. We're problem solvers by nature, so we want to help. We want to solve your problem. So you have to give us that opportunity by just having a dialogue with us. Hey, I've got this thing. Can you do it? Whatever, and we'll help you. That's what we do.
All right, Marshall, you gave us a lot of great tips today. We're really happy that you joined us, and I'm sure our listeners are happy too because you offered a great breadth of knowledge. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it was awesome. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you.
Thanks, Marshall.
So my favorite tip, just from my own perspective, was what you talked about, social media, curating content and using other people's content, because sometimes people say, I can't come up with my own blog, or I can't do that. But if you become a curator, I've gone on Twitter and seen people who that's what they do. They put out digests and they compile stuff, and people start looking to them for certain subject matter. So that is a good way to kind of get out there if you're leery of devoting too much time to social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we always mention that you don't want to go on social media and just sell, or just talk about yourself. So it's very easy to either find content you think that will be worthwhile to other people who have the same interests as you, or like Marshall mentioned, just like if you're following people, you broadcast their content, you get a dialogue back and forth, and then you're making connections that'll help you in the long run.
Cool. So people should check out the Dream Shop in the October issue of Wearables
Yeah,
in print
definitely.
or on wearablesmag.com.
Both, yeah.
You're also on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on Stitches is also on Facebook. So yeah, people can check us out. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.